Women and their role in the UAW. During the sit-down strike of 1936 in Flint, Michigan, women played an important role in the success of the United Auto Workers Union. Two organizations, the Women's Auxiliary and the Women's Emergency Brigade, were formed to aid the strikers. The General Motors factory was shut down by the union workers of the Fisher Body Plant No. 1. Car production was at a standstill because the workers wanted higher wages and better working conditions. The workers only got 45 cents an hour, and the lines were moving very quickly. GM was a big car company and part of the Big Three, which also included Ford and Chrysler. The Depression was near its end. However, the working class individuals were not properly compensated. The United Auto Workers Union fought to change the unfair conditions. The UAW had formed in 1935, 2 years before the strike. The stress of the situation began to wear on the families. In 1936, on December 30th at high noon, the workers sat down on the job and shut down production. The Women's Auxiliary formed December 31st for women to support their husbands. The Women's Emergency Brigade formed shortly after that. Over the duration of 43 days, the UAW was on strike. The Women's Auxiliary provided food and blankets for the workers and informed the town of the issues of the strike. The Women's Emergency Brigade helped organize demonstrations, walk the picket lines, as well as help the Women's Auxiliary. On January 11th, the Flint and Company police tried to enter the factory, but strikers wouldn't let them in, so they resorted to tear gassing the factory and eventually shooting. 16 people were wounded, 11 strikers and 5 police officers. After 6 hours of fighting, one leading woman in both the Women's Auxiliary and the Women's Emergency Brigade, Jenora Johnson Dollinger, took the loudspeaker and asked all the women in the crowd to come up to the picket line and stand by the men they loved. Her exact words were, "There are women and mothers of children down here, and I'm asking all the other women to come down to the picket lines." The first woman to walk forward was held back by her coat, and she just walked right out of it, despite the very cold night. The women in these organizations had to be strong-willed to be able to handle the tough circumstances of the strike. Most women were between the ages of 25 to 45 years old. However, not everyone fit in that demographic. When a woman in her late 50s, early 60s signed up to join the Women's Emergency Brigade, Jenora questioned her about joining. The woman responded with a speech about her generations of family who had worked in the GM factory and wanted to do anything she could to help. The UAW won the strike by springing a surprise attack on Plant No. 4, which was the largest plant. The UAW faked a meeting with spies from GM and let slip that they were going to strike at Plant No. 9. All of the company police were sent there, leaving Plant No. 4 unguarded. The UAW really planned to take No. 4, but only the most trusted members were told that. Even the workers at No. 9 thought it was the real thing. When the workers at No. 9 went on strike, the police went in, and a large fight started. A worker leaned out a window and yelled to the Women's Emergency Brigade that the police were strangling them, so the women started breaking all the windows they could. The women had been told in advance to use their wooden clubs for defense. They broke the windows to let out the tear gas that was inside the factory. When the situation at Plant No. 9 calmed, the women went to Plant No. 4. At Plant No. 4, the workers told the women to hold the gates closed so the police could not get in. The women linked arms and stood shoulder to shoulder in front of the gates, preventing the police from entering No. 4, the most efficient plant. With this vital plant closed, GM had to negotiate. Negotiations started on February 3rd. The GM officials and UAW members refused to be in the same room, so Governor Frank Murphy went between the two rooms. The negotiations lasted 8 days, and finally, on February 11th, GM and the UAW reached an agreement. The agreement was 1 page long and stated that the UAW was the sole bargainer for workers. They also got a 10% raise and a 2-week vacation, among other things. That agreement also stated that when women were employed, they must be treated fairly. Without these strong women, the UAW could not have won the strike. Women have not yet overcome all the unfairness of company employment, but progress has been made. It is in actions like the Flint sit-down strike that shines light on the success that can occur when men and women work together for a common goal.